This podcast is a project of the Climate Designers Network.
Hey, this is Eric. I hope all of you are having a great start to summer. In fact, the summer solstice is June 21st in the Northern Hemisphere. That's today. So happy summer, everyone. And one thing many of us love to do when it gets warm out is head out to the water. But what if that idyllic summer beach vacation nearly turned deadly? That gorgeous blue ocean was hiding a toxic secret. That's the beginning of the activism story for today's guest, Matilda De Silva. Matilda runs a great nonprofit in Singapore called the Ocean Purpose Project. And it would have never likely been but for one fateful day at the beach that turned toxic, sickening her for the rest of her life. Today, she has put down her microphone from her comedian, singing, and TV days and picked up a new passion to make sure what happened to her doesn't happen to anyone else, by conserving and regenerating our oceans and beaches. Matilda was a really fun guest. She's also really funny. But what I loved most about her is that she cares. She cares a lot. And if you agree after listening to this episode, pitch in to her nonprofit or simply join the ocean conservation movement that she is helping to lead.
Hi, I'm Matilda De Silva, and I'm the CEO and founder of Ocean Purpose Project. We are a social enterprise that's based on the beaches of Pasir Ris in Singapore, and we work in ocean conservation, as well as turning ocean pollution into solutions. You can find out more about us on our website, www.oceanpurposeproject.com.
Matilda, welcome to Climify. It's wonderful that we were finally able to connect and have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. Your journey into becoming a sustainability advocate is one that, first of all, I found inspiring. Just have to say that just at the start here. And it's something that you put front and center on your website and the other kind of media about you online. And I find that's actually really important for folks to see, because all of us are in on this fight and we got here from somewhere. And so can you tell us more about this journey and how that led to the Ocean Purpose Project becoming what it is today?
I know, Eric. How much time do you have?
Yeah, well,
this is a long story.
You know what? We can go as long as you want, because your story is so interesting that I think it's important to tell.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric, for sharing that, and for asking me as well. It's one of those things where I tell this story a lot, and it's interesting to kind of see the reaction of how people react to that, especially people who've known me for a long time, or they've seen me on TV. I used to be on television a lot, a comedy show. I used to also be on Singapore Idol.
I know, that is so awesome.
So, there's a kind of a perception of me in Singapore based on, what they saw on television.
Yeah.
I used to work as a TV producer. I used to be the head of social media for, national broadcasters, telcos, banks and stuff. So it's one of those things where there is a public perception of me. There is a corporate perception of me. And then there's a sport perception of me. I mean, I'm not an athlete by any measure, but I used to represent Singapore in dragon boating. I used to cycle 35 kilometers to work and 35 kilometers back. So, I mean,
that's an athlete in my book right there. That's an athlete for sure.
Yeah, not too shabby. I mean, I could actually stay on the dance floor until about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Back in the good old days. And it's like, you take it for granted, I guess.
I was just going to say, the story about you coming from media is one that I find truly fascinating. And I feel like it's probably, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, been pretty helpful in your new path at the Ocean Purpose Project.
Well, to a certain extent. So, I mean, I came from that background. I'm not a scientist or an engineer. I'm not a marine biologist. I don't come from that field. But, in 2015, I was representing my country in a dragon boat race in Boracay in the Philippines. I think you might have heard about this place, on CNN. Everybody talks about it as the place to be, beautiful beaches, party atmosphere. And
Yes.
there's a dragon boat race that happens there every year. And all the celebrities descend on the island. It's a big deal as well. And it just so happened that year I was there for about just 3 days, like a weekend. And when I came back home to Singapore, I was in the hospital because my immune system had shut down. I
Oh my
was
God.
just, it was terrible. Like everything that you could possibly think of. I couldn't keep anything in. Everything was like, it's leaving my body. Like, it was horrible. I was just like in complete, disarray. I was like, okay, wait, hold on. If this is a bad hangover,
Yeah.
like, it's kind of, persisting for over a week. What is happening here? And in fact, I wasn't the only person that fell sick. Quite a few members of my team from Team Singapore were really sick. And some of like months later, when I found out that, there were quite a few Filipino dragon boaters who had to be, who fell very sick and had to be airlifted out.
Oh my God.
And so this was where I was like, okay, the official story was that there was, kind of bad rice that they served in the catering, and that's why everyone felt sick. And I was like, I know about y'all, but I was pretty sure none of us was eating no rice. And we're just having San Miguel's. We're like surviving off beers. So, in 2018, a friend of mine sent me an article that said, hey, have you seen this? Like, they're actually going to close the island of Boracay for 6 months. So this is kind of like where I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, how do you even close an island, right?
For 6 months.
And apparently, President, for 6 months. And, this was bizarre because, this happened, I think, around April in 2018. And the official reason was that the government of Philippines was going to close the island. This was unprecedented. And President Rodrigo Duterte actually called it a cesspool. In fact, the reason for this was that they discovered that you had a massive amount of sewage and all forms of waste that was literally just going straight into the touristic beaches. So, for example, there was an increase in coliform bacteria level. There was fecal contamination. It was just like, sewage, wastewater, everything was just going in, untreated into these touristic beaches. And it was insane,
Yeah.
and if you realize, and I went back, and looked at photos from 2015, we were like swimming in that, we were diving in that, we were paddling on that stuff. Like we were,
That's unbelievable.
it's when you look at that and you think, you're like, whoa, okay, this is insane. Now, here's the thing that kind of also hits when we're talking not just about the ecological damage to the area. I mean, while we were there, year after year, I would go to Boracay, and the people who run dive resorts, they would just tell me that they have to keep going further and further out to see any kind of marine life because everything was almost in a dead zone. So that should have told us that something was going wrong. But it's insane that, in that 6 months of them closing, 1.4 billion Singapore dollars, right, of tourism revenue was gone. This is it brings in at least about 100 billion pesos of revenue to the Philippines. And the thing that I couldn't understand was like, wait, why is this happening to me? Like, I didn't do anything. Like, I'm a singer, I'm a performer, I'm on, I'm TV. I just kind of went there to paddle and represent my country. Like, this is not fair. First of all,
Yeah, definitely.
the second bit is, for an island that is bringing in close to 100 billion pesos of tourism revenue, you would think that, the different government agencies and even the hotels and the different kinds of tourism, activities would get together and make sure that they're not just releasing untreated sewage into
Yeah.
their money-making machine. So I was just kind of like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. Now, if you kind of do a little bit of digging and research on your own, one of the things that indicated that there was an excess of nutrient in the water, um, and we can see that in pictures of the races. There was like a green kind of tide that kept washing up on the beach. So a lot of the dragon boaters, we assume that that's because it's the wake or the wash from us paddling, but that green stuff was actually alga lactuca, and it was actually an algae that started to bloom. That should have kind of pointed towards the direction that there was an excess of nutrient in the water. And this is again where for me, I was trying to understand, okay, I'm only exposed to this for 3 days. How could my health completely, go into the toilet, so to speak? I developed
Yeah,
vitiligo within a month. So my skin started turning white. My hair is actually all white. I dye it black.
that's
If I've got to go
that's
on
just
stage.
that's terrifying to imagine. You're just a normal day like you had, and then it completely changed your life based on something that you would never have expected in the ocean. It's truly terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we read about people who are victims of air pollution, or water pollution, ocean pollution, and they are usually people that kind of are on the front of a magazine. We read a story about it, and there is a disconnect, a natural disconnect. But when it happens to you, and I really don't sit well with this word "victim of" like ocean pollution. It really drives me nuts. Like I hate to be looked at as like a victim of any form. Like, even when people kind of look at me and
Mm,
I get asked about my face, like, why is your face half white and half brown? Oh, so poor thing, blah, blah, blah. It really drives me up the wall because like, I'm just not of that character at all. So this is
sure.
again where I was thinking to myself, okay, um, again, like I was upset. I was, just kind of shocked and not understanding what I was supposed to do with this incident. And then I realized that there were a lot of people, uh, I mean, even children, on the island of Boracay who are starting to develop some of these white spots. And this is again where like, I realized that this conversation about ocean pollution also needs to come from the people that are most affected by it.
Yes.
I live by the coast. I do live in front of the beach. And I do believe like the 2 billion of us who do live in coastal areas, we have a responsibility and a duty and also a very important way of articulating why ocean conservation, the prevention of ocean pollution is so important. I mean, just to put this in perspective, sewage as well as farm runoff make up a little bit over 50% of the total ocean pollution type. You've got litter, maybe about 8 to 10% marine litter, and you've got about 30% of that's sewage.
Gee,
So it's literally this topic isn't talked about a lot. We don't
no.
really spend a lot of our waking hour chatting about it. It's very fashionable to kind of like keep referring to plastic as the major issue with our oceans, which it
Yeah, that's what we
is.
hear all about in the news is the plastics and, how we're trying to clean that up and the Pacific garbage patch, but we don't hear about.
And this is also where I felt that I wanted to do something.
Yeah,
And in typical producer, TV producer, and media person fashion, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go for all the beach cleanups with all of the different NGOs, and we're just gonna like, try and clean the beaches, and I'm gonna do my part. And one of the things that I felt while I was doing a beach cleanup was like, okay, where's all of this going? Right?
right.
What about the stuff that we can't see? The same kind of chemicals or like biological materials that made me sick. What do we do about that? And I couldn't find answers. And this is also one of those things where I'm not a very patient person. In fact,
Mm,
anybody that knows me will definitely say that I'm probably one of the most impatient people that you've ever met. You can call it like, just a remnant of being a TV producer, because we're like, we ain't got time. Let's get to it real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah,
And
yeah.
this is where I felt that I wanted to do something, but I wasn't going to quit my great job at a bank or at a telco, working, being the head of social media. I wasn't going to quit that, a steady job, to go off and do something crazy like starting a social enterprise. And I don't know what possessed me, but I felt at the end of 2019 that 2020 was the year to go off and start an ocean conservation social enterprise. And then I quit my great job and I did it in 2020. And then 2 weeks later, the whole world went into lockdown.
Right.
We were not even allowed to go onto the beach, let alone outside of our houses. And I was like, oh my God, I made a mistake. Take me back. This is I tried to beg for my job back, but they were like, no, that's
Too
not
late.
working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too
Well,
late.
2020 was actually probably the perfect year to do it because it was a complete reset, right?
I don't know. My mental health wasn't like perfect at the time, because I was like, how am I supposed to do this?
Yeah, that's scary.
We had 200 confirmed clients at the end of 2019. We lost
Oh
199
my
of them.
God.
We just,
190.
yep, 199. We only had one
Gee,
client left. And,
that's, oh God.
yeah, I
I can't
mean,
imagine being in that situation. That's scary.
I lost a lot of hair, Eric. I'm gonna tell you that.
Oh
But
my
thank
God.
God, like we weren't able to go outside of the house, so nobody really saw how horrible I looked.
Oh no. Oh
Um,
no.
but it was one of those things where, if I come to the building blocks of what I wanted to do, this is again where, I'm really intrigued by inventing. In fact, I did a couple of these profiling things, like a Gallup profiling, where they try to understand what your character is about. And apparently one
Oh
of the
yeah.
characteristics of me is, I'm a futurist. And I was like, what's that mean?
I
I'm not
love
trying to
that.
shoot a rocket to Mars or anything, but this is again where, like, I got to understand a bit more about myself, and why maybe I get irritated or frustrated with people not understand what I'm saying, is because I'm seeing things come together in a way that don't necessarily seem apparent.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example. I couldn't dragon boat anymore, and I used to be a dragon boat coach as well, because I developed muscular spasms as part of this autoimmune issue. And it was just embarrassing. I kept losing my paddle. I wasn't emotionally able to deal with it, although most of my teammates were like, it's fine. We can just buy another paddle. And I was like, no, no, no. I'm not in the right headspace. I haven't kind of had my Oprah moment. Like, I just want to paddle alone. So if I
Yeah.
can have a muscular spasm, I'll just drop in the sea and just get back on the board and just sort it out myself.
Yeah.
And while I was paddling in my beach town of Pasir Ris, I noticed that the same kind of seaweed that was washing up at Boracay was also growing in my town. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, wait a minute. Are we also facing this excess of nutrient? But another thing that I noticed is that the seaweed and the mussels, they were attaching themselves underneath flotation devices. They were growing in and among each other, creating natural ropes. Like you would have gracilaria and mussels attached to that. And then, gracilaria attaches to those mussels and they start to form their own ropes. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then I would observe a lot of the local fishermen who paddle out on kayaks, the recreational fish. They tended to go towards where these so-called curtains of seaweed and mussels were growing. And I was like, why are you, what's so special about this area? And they were like, oh, there's a whole lot of small fish that come here. They hide among the seaweed and the mussels. Um, they attract bigger fish, and that's why we're here. And you can see that the water, the visibility is actually clearer here than just 2 or 3 meters away. So this was where I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so, this kind of began the journey where I felt that I wanted to build something, which is Ocean Purpose Project today, that addresses all forms of ocean pollution, but really looks at the source of the pollution and understands it a little bit deeper. So, for example, when we talk about alva lactuca or sea lettuce, right? That's what
Sea lettuce. Yeah, I don't know what
yeah,
that is. What's sea lettuce?
that's the common name of that. Basically, it's an edible green algae that's in, the family Ulvaceae. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's in the genus of Ulva. Now, what's interesting is the algae is agnostic. It's neither bad nor good. It just is, right? Us as humans kind of like, the algae bloom in Boracay is where, this is what's adding to the problem. Whereas Alva lactuca does occur naturally in this part of the world. And
Yeah.
in fact, it's you can find this at any aquarium shop and things like this. And this is also kind of where I found it very interesting. And I was trying to understand, okay, what about this alva is able to maybe right a lot of the wrongs with regards to sewage in the water or excess chemicals. So for example, in the place that I live in the north of Singapore, during this period of time, actually from December, late December until about January, we had heavy rain. Even until February, terrible, intense rain. There was a massive flooding that was happening just above us in Malaysia, in Johor. And, I think about 2 weeks ago, we encountered, thick orange scum on the top of, the seawater. Like literally, it expanded from like the entire northeastern seaboard of Singapore. And what I was trying to understand and what I've been talking about for the longest time is how do, things like agricultural runoff, chemicals from fertilizers, from oil palm plantations or other kind of plantations in the north, when heavy rain comes in, it washes into our neck of the woods and it does cause an excess of nutrient in the water, which does lead to algae bloom,
Right.
to
Yeah.
phytoplankton bloom. This is again where how do you solve that?
Right. No.
There is
Yeah.
no like tech solution. There is no big AI solution. We can kind of identify roughly when this is going to hit, but we don't have like a solution right now. I think to give an American example, all of that sargassum that's washing up in Florida right now.
Oh,
I
the
saw
red
a
algae. Yeah.
comedy sketch on the
Seaweed,
Daily
the red
Show.
seaweed. Yeah.
That's right. Like you can tell that it's coming. You can kind of predict, but to date, we haven't been able to figure out how we prevent it from even, kind of blooming in the first place. And this is really where our work at Ocean Purpose Project in creating curtains of seaweed and mussels that grow on floating fish farms in the north of Singapore. They basically kind of biohack the properties of the seaweed and these mussels, where they are absorbing, from the external of the farm, they're absorbing all of this excess fertilizers. So, for example, a lot of the ammonia, a lot of the nitrogen-based substances, and
Yeah. From the
it's
fertilizer.
exactly, and you cannot consume that, so that's not for eating. And
Yeah.
so this is again where, for the fish that grow in the nets that are submerged in the sea, inside of this curtain, they are far more receptive to, these sea and mussel curtains, as opposed to very loud, machine-based water filters that use these round plastic pellets to kind of filter through the water.
Yeah.
And, of course, those plastic pellets, they do end up washing up on the beaches. So, this is again where I felt that I really wanted a systems approach. I wanted to understand what the issues are. I wanted to
Yeah.
rope in the community, which is our traditional fish farmers who have been there from generation to generation. And I also wanted to, get information from indigenous people who used to live in my town. The last one, who is still working at one of the farms, he would tell me stories of how certain types of seaweed could be boiled and turned into a jelly. Certain kind of wild boar love to eat that alva lactuca, that green seaweed, because it's like a sweet, it's like a treat for them.
Interesting.
And all these stories, all of the science, working with universities like James Cook University, it really allowed us to be able to understand a little bit more about the ecology of the place. And this is again where we are already seeing data that explains very clearly that there is a marked reduction of ammonia nitrate and nitrites
It's working.
where our seaweed mussel lines are planted, as opposed it's working. It's not like, kind of removing everything, but it's reducing. And I think, having a native species do that and really getting nature, working hand in glove with nature, as opposed to, bloom is bad,
Yes.
all of that stuff. Like I said, there's no bad or good in nature. Nature just is. And this is again where I felt that as a TV producer, I interview a lot of people from different necks of the woods, whether they are researchers or government agency people, or whether they are community leaders, NGOs. And, that way of working in the creative sphere, well, you're in design, I guess this will
Yes.
help. That way of working and roping in different viewpoints, was really something that I wanted to bring to each ocean purpose project. So, that gives you a bit of explanation, I think, in
Yeah.
terms of, what we do and why.
You weren't kidding. This was a long but interesting story. And I saw a bio of you online that I love because you called yourself the farmer in chief of seaweed, corals, and mussels that will save our seas.
Oh, no. That sounds a bit full of.
Did you write that one, or is that something from another like news organization or something? Because the farmer in chief of seaweed, corals, and mussels.
Yeah, I mean, I am kind of the farmer in chief at
Yeah, you
OPP,
are.
but I work. To be honest with you, I work closely with the fish farmer himself. So he's probably the farmer in chief. I'm more of like like the assistant in chief
The
or like
assistant
whatever
person.
that
Yeah,
is.
okay. Got it.
Yeah, it's also trying to get a lot of the traditional farmers on board, because if you've been growing fish or rearing fish all your life, they don't necessarily know about seaweed. And it's kind of
Yeah,
interesting
no, yeah,
because,
I'm in the same boat. I don't know much
yeah,
about it, and I'm wondering is that um on one of the three pillars that you have in the Ocean Purpose Project is bioremediation. Is that bioremediation that you're doing with these floating things in the ocean?
definitely. So, what we've been trying to do is to use the living organisms that grow natively in passeries. And we don't just refer to academic research that is written about this to verify whether they have been native to the area. We speak with a host of traditional fisher folk. We speak to indigenous people in the area. We speak to residents in the area. We do a lot of observation work. And so this is really where we get an understanding of, how these organisms such as seaweed and mollusks such as mussels, how they can, remove contaminants and pollutants from the water, and what we can do with those materials. So the bioremediation pillar is kind of interesting because, it's something that, I've had a couple of young people interviewing to be interns, and they're like, I don't know, it seems a bit complicated. I never heard of it before. And like, it sounds very sciencey. Can you kind of like give me something simple? And, this is again where I think there's so much of possibility for us to spread this message
Yeah.
of working hand in glove with nature, with these kinds of regenerative concepts, especially with native species. And, what we're also learning about bioremediation is that, this is not just something that we do in our little town in Pasir Ris, but, it's already been done in, many different kinds of incidences. There was the Exxon Valdez spill where bioremediation was employed. There's so many different types of bioremediation, biostimulation, bioaugmentation, intrinsic bioremediation. There's so many ways in which this could work. But for us, what we're doing is all that seaweed and mussels that grow in the periphery, we are trying to build the case for us to take some of that material and turn that into biostimulants and biofertilizers and even compost that can be used for herb garden. So if you come to our beach offices in Pasir Ris, it's the first beach office in Singapore that, is off-grid and, is specifically on the beach itself. Like from
That's
our office, you
amazing.
can
That's
literally see
great.
the sea. Just next to it, yeah, we're in a national park. It's wonderful. So we work hand in glove with MPark Singapore, and we're really trying to create this link where, we don't need to use chemical fertilizers anymore,
Mhm.
where we can very clearly explain how seaweed and algae, as well as, mollusk shells or waste shells can be turned into fertilizers for
Yeah, back
plants, and
on
not just any
I heard someone say that healthy soil can lead to healthy oceans. And I think
100%.
yeah, and what you're doing with the seaweed and the what would be considered, waste back on land as fertilizer is super smart.
100%. This is again where I felt that, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, we do beach cleanups in Ocean Purpose Project. That's kind of what pays everybody's salaries and, keeps our solar lights on, so to speak. Pays for the rent and all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
definitely. You got to do that.
We got to do that. Of course, we also, take things one step further with our beach cleanups, where a section of the plastics collected, the ocean plastics, the stuff that cannot be mechanically recycled, we are basically trying to create a system that converts that ocean plastic into hydrogen, a mobile system. So I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. But, it's really also about saying, for us, um, let's say for somebody who's a part of a community that is facing ocean pollution, I feel it's so important for people like us around Southeast Asia and around the world to be thinking about how, as a system, we're able to reinvent, disrupt existing systems of how ocean pollution is thought about, how it's treated,
Right.
and bring that connection between the land and the sea. Because, you're absolutely right. What we do on land affects our oceans.
Yes.
What we do in our oceans affects our land as well. So if, agricultural runoff is what's causing chemicals at sea that is also causing algae bloom, then, pollution at sea is also washing up in droves on our beaches. I mean, this
Yeah.
first half of the year, we see, I believe in one corporate cleanup, we actually picked up 500 kg in just like under 45 minutes.
plastic.
We did a beach cleanup, 500 kgs of, plastic and waste. And
Jesus.
it was insane. I felt bad for the poor people that were doing this cleanup. They've been in the office
They had
most
hurt
of their life.
backs. Yeah.
And I was like, y'all better stretch with me. Like,
Yeah, you
just
better do
before we
some
do this
yoga.
thing, I'm like, I'm touching 40. I know I'm going to hurt. Like, y'all better make sure you
Well,
get your stretch on and
I,
drink some
well, I-
isotonic because we're going to pick up a lot.
yeah, well, I wonder, like you talked about disrupting the systems, and I think that's totally right. Like if you want to change the system, right, you have to do something pretty radical, right? Or else it'll just continue to function. And I'm wondering, like, as a designer or someone making something, what can we do better to prevent some of these things that you're seeing in the land and then back into the oceans?
I think this is really interesting that you're coming at this from a design perspective. There's so many different principles of design: contrast, balance, emphasis, proportion,
Yeah.
rhythm, pattern, repetition, all of that stuff. I think this is also something that's interesting to me because repetition is something that, like, kind of catches my eye. So, with us and each project that we do, it's really about solution focused. A lot of our staff working in Ocean Purpose Project is sometimes like, oh my God, if I ask Matilda a question, she's literally just gonna like throw the question back at me and go like, what do you think we should do? And very often, I start to see like how a lot of the issues around pollution are repeating themselves, and so this is again where what we're trying to do is to disrupt the existing system and create communication strategies, to create ideation strategies, to create systems in place that would create brand new strategies that are repeated. To
Yeah.
do that requires us to really kind of reinvent the wheel. So, I like to use our town as an explanation. So a lot of people are like, I want to do a beach cleanup at this location and another location. Why do I always have to do this at your beach in Pasir Ris? And so, what we've been trying to do is create a prototype of our little beach town, which actually Pasir Ris in Malay, when you translate it into English, means white sands. So in order for us to really have white sands, what's it going to take? And, the imagery that comes to mind of these coconut trees by the side of the beach, it's not just a GIF or a picture,
Yeah,
it's actually, it is what we experience in our beautiful beach town. And,
it's your everyday.
in all of our communications, the pictures, the videos, we're trying to basically use the imagery, even use music, get people to understand that beauty of the town. In fact, we did a beautiful storytelling series So there's a couple of ways that we use design to tell the story and to get people to treasure what it is that we have in our beach town. So one of them is working with a school called School of the Arts. And although they're called School of the Arts, they actually do a fantastic science program. And we have a wonderful student there who has been creating comic art from
Oh, yeah.
animals that live in our beach town. And through the comic art, for example, there's Dushi the dugong or manatee, I think you would call them in the
Yeah,
US.
manatee. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So Dushi loves seagrass, and Dushi communicates a lot about seagrass and blue carbon systems. You've got Mien Me, the mud skipper, who doesn't realize that she's wearing noodle packets, and she thinks it's fashionable.
I want to see
And
these
we're
comics. They sound super cute.
actually, yeah, you can find them on our Instagram, and it's really interesting because the characters are basically playing the characters of people in our town. They're addressing issues that we have around plastic waste, around seagrass and stuff. But it's also a way for us to when we do our school programs with preschool kids, through songs, I sing songs and I do a storytelling with these cartoon characters, and we get our children to understand what's happening at our beach through these
Yeah.
characters. So that's one way of how we do that. We're about to launch a Tiny Desk concert type series
Oh,
at our
that's
beach
awesome.
office. Yeah, it's we're looking forward to that. We've already got like amazing solar powered DJs called Wild Pearl who come and spin
Wait, what?
for
What
us.
is this? Solar powered DJs?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they even
You have the coolest organization.
have a solar panel that they bring to the beach itself when we're doing a beach cleanup, and then they bring it back to our office, and then they're just spinning, creating different kinds of music while we're doing our beach cleanups and stuff. And this is again where that creativity, that music, that artwork, it's blending into the science of what we do.
Yeah, it
I
is.
mean,
I can see that.
yeah, and it's touching people in different ways and starting to open up conversations that might not have or links that might not have come. So, for example, um, I kind of had an idea of how I wanted to take the sound of our seaweed mussel lens. They do release a sound.
Yeah, what is this? What does
Just
it
kind of like
sound
the
like?
bubbles, and sounds kind of like popcorn popping. Like we wanted to have like an undersea microphone and record that
Yeah,
and get our DJs to mix that.
that would be
And,
fantastic.
so this is again where like, and it takes one step further. We have, members of the Down Syndrome Association who reached out to us and said that they have their own dance instructors who are, individuals with special needs who want to come and spend time with us at our office. They want to learn what we
Wow.
do. They want to observe the seaweed, and they want to create a dance and teach it to us and teach it to our community. And I
That
think it's beautiful how we're spreading into different things, and the community is starting to jam with us.
they are like literally with your DJs.
Yeah, that they're jamming. Like, it's that. I mean, you have a concept about movement, about variety, about unity and design, and it's this is again where like we're bringing that in. And what's really interesting is that the most arty of people are the people that are also giving us intriguing insights and asking crazy questions about the science behind our projects. So I'll give you an example. Um, One of the religious leaders in our town was a priest. He loves all the music stuff. He's Filipino. He enjoys music, singing, dancing, all of that. And he was talking about the movement of the plastic that's at sea and how it's approaching the shore.
Mhm.
He gave an interesting example of how at different sections of the shore you see different sizes of plastic waste. At a certain section, you'll see like the microplastic type stuff. At another section, it's all plastic bottles. And another section, it's all, fragments of plastics. And, he was kind of like, is there a way to be able to, at sea itself, because at sea it's all mixed, right? Figure out
Yeah.
how, you could capture that movement of the wave and, prevent it from even ending up on shore. Um, and I think it's amazing how, when we put people in that space, that creative space, when we get them to start, thinking, laterally, when we get them to start realizing that we're not just here doing beach cleanup, it's ocean conservation,
Yeah.
but we also do mention things like, for example, seaweeds in our town grow at a rate of 14% per day. That just
Wow.
triggers some creative stuff. Somebody might
That's a
want to do an
lot.
artwork on it. Somebody might want to create a song. Yeah. Somebody might want to deep dive and understand exactly why. What are the conditions that are causing that? So this is also the kind of jamming environment, that creative environment that I want to create at our beach office, where you just have that great vibe that attracts that tribe, who are just ready to kind of get stuck in and create.
Yeah, one of the things I think that you do really well is this co-creation with the community, and I think that, and you can tell me how this has been working for you, but I really think that that is, as one of your pillars, is behavior change in your organization. I feel like that co-creation is really helping people see, right, the forest for the trees, or in this case, the ocean, and what they can do to help.
Definitely. I mean, one of the key issues that we are having is really, how do we, in order for you to drive behavior change, it has to be fun, whatever it is that we're trying to do, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can kind of slice it many ways, but like, standing in the sun, in like absolute like smelly trash that is not fun for a lot of Singaporeans, let alone for a lot of people.
Nobody.
It's how do we use behavior change messaging? How do we create, like a very clear call to action? How do we, express how the action of just removing that plastic on the beach is a small step towards a possible solution being derived from it. Let's say like large scale plastic to hydrogen. How do we explain the relevance of that? So this is again where like, when people are like, what's the big deal, man? I can just bring my own garbage bag and a bunch of tongs and just clean up the beach myself. I don't need to like pay you an NGO to do all of this stuff. And anyway, plastic to hydrogen sounds real highfalutin, and you're not even an engineer. What are you doing? I mean, I get this on a daily basis. So it's also where explaining the relevance of why, as an NGO, we really need to like, step outside the zone or the box that we've been assigned. How we need to do more than just raising awareness. We're not going to change the world through a TikTok dance alone. We need
Correct.
to step that up and say, like, what else is coming from that? How do we use, these things or these platforms of social media, or even like, different artistic platforms to explore big ticket issues,
Yeah.
energy, food, water. This is what the world is grappling with in sustainability. When we say all of that ocean plastic that nobody wants to touch, we could turn that into hydrogen.
Right.
It's so simple, but it's so complicated. But if we had enough people, let's say all of the people who, keep trying to figure out how we can build a smaller iPhone, if we had those kinds of people working on this kind of project, we would be able to crack that in like a year max.
Yeah, I'd be down to help with that, right? And I think you said earlier on that you're not a scientist, you're not a marine biologist, but you're a creative person, and I think that creativity that you're bringing into this, I think, is even more important, really, than the science. And I really commend you on that.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. And I can understand the struggle for, let's say, somebody who's been, dedicating, and I'm literally like, mentioning like two individuals who've spent 10 years, a decade of their life, literally just like in a lab, day in, day out, focused on like thermocatalytic and bioconversion of biomass, of
Mhm.
plastics, of, understanding how syngas production relates to hydrogen, trying to create the hydrogen classification system. So, I mean, a lot of my life and is also spent with these people who are the scientists who've, dedicated a significant portion of their life and their brain capacity towards developing these systems. But because they're so plugged in to that stuff, I find it riveting. But a lot of people are like, whoa, that's a lot of concept. That's a lot of big words. I'm seeing a lot of graphs. I don't understand that. Give it
Right.
to me
Yeah, you can tell the story, right? You're good at that.
in like 2 sentences. And,
Yeah.
that kind of like oversimplification, of some of the big scientific issues around sustainability is also what's getting the scientific community really put off and irritated by it. And I
Yeah.
do believe that, like, my role maybe is to kind of like, like decipher and to figure out how we can pull different kinds of researchers from different universities around the world, how we can pull them together and how we can kind of get them to jam the way that we've been jamming with our, arts and community people. And I think, this is also a chance for them, two researchers that we work with, who are always stuck in the lab. I actually invited them for a kayak and clean competition where they had to represent their university. And, when they were out on the water, looking at what washed up, they had a brand new perspective about marine plastics, about how
Wow.
prevalent it is, about why the work is important. And I think, our role is also in bringing um, that kind of behavior change,
Yeah.
about, from the people who I would say it can be a bit like you can get jaded working on this stuff because, in between trying to get a grant to fund your research, and all of that stuff, explaining to influencers who get the science wrong. People are trying to sensationalize things just so that they can drive investment into certain areas.
Mhm.
It can really be very heavy emotionally on the science community. And this is again where what we're trying to do is just to light that spark and figure out how, if we're struggling to do it alone, maybe this partnership and ecosystem approach is what's needed.
Yeah, that leads me to a question for you, and that is, you've talked about a lot of the projects you've done. Do you have one that's your favorite? Maybe it was very successful, one that someone can emulate somewhere else in the world?
Oh, that's fantastic, Eric. Basically there's loads of projects. There's the plastic to hydrogen bit is a little bit slow, but we're so lucky that our government in Singapore chose us to speak at COP27, not on like
Right.
NGO Day or on Water Day, but on Energy Day. And you had a lot of people just kind of looking at me going like,
Congratulations.
"Oh no, is she going to slam all of us?" And I was like, "No, I'm here to talk about how plastic can be turned into hydrogen, guys." And so this is that was a great success. We're really thankful for that kind of government support from different divisions, from Prime Minister's office, from Ministry of Sustainability and Environment, from National Parks, from NEA, National Environment Agency. That just kind of like, like puts a bit of sail in our wings and helps us to, have a little bit more authority when we speak to international agencies and governments. But, a project that I think I should mention, and I think I've talked about our seaweed stuff. I love working with our farmers, but a project that I should mention that can be replicated is our beach office. So, I hated working in an office building with aircon and having to wear like high heel shoe and all of that. I hate all of that formality. It drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
Like being in the cubicle is like, I'm like Neo in the Matrix. Like, I'm like, just want
Yeah.
somebody to
I
just call
can't
me and
stand
get
it.
me out.
I can't stand it either. Cannot stand
Yeah.
cubicles.
And I dreamt of the day when I could go to work with no shoes and work on the beach. And, what I'm so proud of is that, we had many iterations of our beach office. And I think that's something that anybody that's working in oceans, I'm really sorry for all of you who want grants, where they've put you in a commercial factory building and, and you've got to have a free co-working space there. But I'm just about to tell you that you can't work for oceans if you're not on the ocean. You need to be there.
Yeah.
You need to see it. You need to, get a boat if you can. Like if somebody can sponsor you a boat, and I'm just putting this out there, Eric, anybody that's listening, if you got a boat and you want to send it over to us, I'm gonna put your sticker and your face on it, but that would really help.
Yeah.
That beach office is so important. And that's something that I'm so proud that the materials used to build our beach office, every single piece of furniture, it's all recycled materials. The panels outside of our building, they're made out of F1 event structures. What's holding it all together is a technology called Tubular. It's a Singaporean technology where you kind
What's
of
that?
plug and play like Lego. It's like kind of like sticks that allow you to plug all the Lego pieces together.
Oh,
We have recycled solar panels from a wonderful research team, Nanyang Technological University solar research team. That's what powers us. I mean, like plants, we have plants that have been donated to us from even some of our interns as well. That's, I think, something that can be replicated when you're building your beach office or your ocean conservation office. Think about what materials can be salvaged and can be used to build your little, your workspace. Figure out how you could work on the oceans, how you could actually, have a space where the community can come see you. Because, like one of the things that we realized when, we are popular on social, sort of. We're not very popular, but okay. But once we had a beach office, the curiosity from people, from children, from, elderly that come up to us, the questions they ask, the learnings that they have, I think that's something that if you're going to be doing ocean community work, you need to have a community presence. So I
yeah.
would suggest that that's probably a big success that we've got. And working, we are in a national park. So, having that relationship, it's not always easy, but it's something that both parties really take a lot of effort to work on and really understanding, how important this kind of movement is for our oceans. I think, those are things that can definitely be replicated.
Yeah, no, I could see that. It's a great selling point to get more people involved in the kind of work that you're doing. Is so many people love the beach, right? Well, hey, come move to the beach and you'll be part of saving it.
Oh, we're going to write that down. We're going to write that down. That sounds real
Hey,
good.
you're welcome. Yeah, yeah. Well, we're coming to up to the end here, and the question that I ask all my guests is one that I'm even more excited to ask you, because I feel like you have so many good solutions to many different problems that this is going to be a pretty amazing idea here. And what I'm wondering is, if you were asked to switch places with me and you're a design educator, what kind of project or projects would you assign, knowing what you know and the work that you do?
Whoa, Eric, mind blowing.
Mind
Um,
blown. Yeah. It's a tough one.
what's the profile of student that you usually encounter?
Oh, yeah. Well, my listeners, right, will encounter students from undergraduate to graduate. They are either maybe from the country, living in the city. It's kind of a wide variety, right? It's not just one type and ethnicity and experience. It's diverse. So that doesn't really help you, does it? But that's who we deal with on a daily basis.
Well, I guess if I was Eric Benson, is it Prof. Eric Benson, Dr. Eric Benson?
I have nobody ever call me professor, but
Okay.
I don't know. You can call me professor. That's fine.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I was Professor Eric Benson, yeah, I think one of the things that we've realized from, let's say, students who are from overseas universities who come over and they do like research tourism with us. Um, you know, I realized that a lot of students from different universities are looking for projects in sustainability that they can get hands on. They don't want to approach things from a very theoretical model anymore.
Yeah.
They want to get hands on. They want to understand what they can contribute to a particular project with their relevant expertise. So, for example, we had someone who's from engineering background and another bunch of students from agricultural background. And so they looked at our herb garden and they gave us some tips and examples and ideas of in their country, how they would do allotments, the flow of the allotments, how they should be built, etc. So that was really interesting for the Singapore team because we were like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a nice exchange of information. They got very hands-on with us. So they were actually, in the mud, building stuff. And I think, that also is a way of getting people from different countries, different thought processes, different departments of learning to start figuring out how they can jam with each other and work on things. It doesn't all have to be, okay, come and help us, figure out how we can find a more efficient way of emission capture for our plastic to fuel machine or come and plant seaweed mussel lines and, capture data on the water quality when we do water quality assessments. I mean, it can also be creative things, creation of TikTok educational videos that are less than a minute that really, help these very esoteric concepts or hard to grasp words such as bioremediation, such as, thermochemical conversion, understanding these kinds of things. So this is again where for us, what we tend to do is with all students that work with us, I do a presentation and I share what it is that we do. And from there, we create like a kind of a jam session where the students themselves identify what they feel are the problems and the challenges. They come on site with us and then again, they refine what those problems and challenges are. And then we just go off and say, okay, share with us what kind of project you want to do. And then, we can help you along, but you guys own it and and take it to the end. An example for is how we had a group of students from the School of the Arts, and they wanted to work on research. And so they created a fantastic research paper around seaweed, Asian seaweed species, carbon sequestration potential, some of the challenges in place. And the research paper was so good, we were able to take that and turn it into an Asian Geographic article.
Wow.
We were able to present that at the UN Ocean Conference. And I'm talking about like 17-year-olds.
Yeah, that's a success story right
maybe
there.
5 or 6 of them. And 3 of them actually are working as interns with us right now. So it's amazing because I didn't expect that they were going to deliver such an amazing body of work. They were so motivated. And, for us, we were able to really take that and make that go a long way. So I think that's
wonderful
a
project.
good example.
Clearly, right, you have a really good framework there for someone else to emulate in a similar type of scenario. So thank you for that. That was great. It was also great having you on the show today. It was very entertaining and very informative. I've learned a lot about what you're doing and I really appreciate it because it needs to be done. Someone has to do it.
Thank you so much, Eric. You're most welcome to come over to Singapore and to Pasir Ris and bring all your students with you.
Oh yeah, they'd love that. I would too.
We got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, well, before we go, where can we find you online again?
So you can learn more about us on our socials. That's at Ocean Purpose Project. You can also find out about us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. What else have we got?
Everything.
We got everything in the kitchen sink. You can also find us on our website, Ocean Purpose Project. That's www.oceanpurposeproject.com.
This podcast is co-produced by Bianca Sandico and me. A big special thanks to Ellen Keith Shaw and Christine Pilot for their gorgeous work on our new branding, Batul Rashik and Mark O'Brien for their continued design help, Brandy Nichols and Michelle Wynn for their strategic guidance and always supporting me on this podcast. If you enjoy the work we all do here and you have a spare minute or two, we would truly appreciate it if you left a rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. The more folks that review our program, the higher the algorithm pushes up Climify in the search results. And in turn, the more likely we all can learn how to become climate designers.